Bird, 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 bird. Get him, get him, get him, get him, get him. Yeah! Ron Babe was right. Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry.
Hey, everybody, it's no. I told you I was going to refrain from that. I told you that. In fact, there's three things you should know. All right, you should know the name of the host of the show you're listening to. You should know the name of the show you're listening to because you just hit play on your device. So why would I have to say that? The third thing is you should know that OnX is the title sponsor of this show. And it never came into play any more than it had to last week. I went up to go chase grouse and woodcock over the Mackinac Bridge, or as we say, we went up north. And when you're up in the UP of Michigan, you got a lot of places to go. You got a lot of choices, but what you don't have is a lot of cell coverage. OnX has got you covered with offline mapping. I mapped out my days where I wanted to go, saved the offline map, and even though I was in the wilderness, I didn't feel like I was left in the wilderness. They are always changing the game. Speaking of changing the game, Gunner did it again, okay? Just when I thought I didn't need something, when they made something, I didn't know I needed that. They came out with their food bowls. They sent me a stack of them. They got my dog's names on them. And I'm like, great, I've got new food bowls. Well, it's like they were reading my mind, okay? When I go hunting, wherever I go, I like to feed my dogs in the last spot that I hunt. Because there's always a dog or two that hasn't hunted. They need to get out and run their legs a little bit. The ones that come back, they need to get some water and chill out and cool down before dinner. And I also don't want to feed them when I'm back at camp, okay? I don't want to be putting the headlamp on and measuring food out. Well, now I can do that in the morning. Every dog's got their own bowl with a sealable lid on top of it. They stack up. They don't tip over. If they did tip over, and I tested this personally, on purpose, you can knock the whole stack of them over. They can bounce on concrete, and the lids don't come off. So you get your dog's meals ready in the morning, and that way you can leave the food crate back at camp, or if you're living right out of the bag of dog food or whatever container you're using. They must have known I didn't know I needed this, and it was so nice. Got all the dogs, all the portions are right. I don't want to spend time doing this back at camp. What I want to do back at camp is talk about the hunt that day and have an ice-cold line and kugel. That's what I want to do at camp. Gunner just made the end of my day a little bit easier. They did. It just as Pike Gear made my hunt a little bit easier. Okay, it was wet up there. It rained at night, drizzled during the day, but what that means is when you're grouse and woodcock hunting, the woods are wet. I was wearing the Dakota pants and the Tongass top. The woods might have been wet, but I wasn't. Period. Kind of like Boss shot shells. Period. I don't know why you would shoot anything else. I just don't get it. If you like to go to a big box store and look at all the options and overthink, no, there isn't anything that you can shoot on this North American continent or anywhere else that you can't find a Boss shot shell to fit that species of bird. I literally use their number 7s for basically everything. Not goose, but probably could if it was a close shot, if I ever waited for him to get into the decoys. But Boss shot shells, copper-plated bismuth, it's not going to make you a better shot, but if you hit it, you get it. It's kind of like Garmin. It's not going to make your dog any better, but it's going to give you peace of mind, and it's going to give you tracking and training all the time, 24/7. You are not going to get a better necklace to put around your dog or transmitter in your pocket than a Garmin. And believe me, I hunted with some professionals this week. Like, you're going to hear about one of them on this podcast. The whole camp, everybody was rocking brand new Garmin 300Is. I was there with my trusty old 550 Plus, but you'll hear about that later. If you haven't gotten yours yet, I just told a friend of mine, Dave Stitt, lives right up here in Michigan. He says, Ron, what collar? He finally got himself a dog. He hasn't had a bird dog in I don't know how many decades. And he texted me on my way home yesterday, and he says, what collar should I get for tracking and training? And I'm like, well, 550 Plus. period. It's the best tracking and training collar out there, period. You can go all fancy schmancy. You can get all the bells and whistles, and you can follow your footsteps and check your heart rate and your blood sugar on the 300i, and you can have an SOS button. You can have all that. But I told him to get the 550 plus, and I told him to go to one place and one place only, W Supply. DOUBLE, the letter U, Supply. That's all you got to do. Type that into your browser. Boom. You got it. You want something else you can type into your browser? Type in Waltons into your browser. Just Waltons. And it's going to come up with everything but the meat. I mean, there will be everything you need for your mobile wildlife kitchen, your mobile wild kitchen at home. You can't have a mobile wild. How about if I start that over? For your traveling wild game kitchen and your home wild game kitchen, Walton's has everything you could possibly need. Everything. You know who else got almost everything you need? O.F. Mossberg and Sons. Now, you know, they just came on the podcast this summer. I'm going to pick up, get this, 12 gauge over and under, 20 gauge over and under, a 20 gauge over and under black label. Ooh, that's going to be nice. And a 410 over and under gold label. So now I got to go to, well, that means I got to go back to Boss Shells and say, I need a case of 410s, to be quite honest with you. Oh, also, their SA20, the semi-auto. Oh, I can't wait. It's like Christmas. But look at O.F. Mossberg and Sons. If you haven't looked at Mossberg in a long time, you haven't looked at Mossberg. Check them out. The other thing, this next thing I got to talk about, and I'm getting there. We're down to 4 more, okay? Just bear with me, okay? On my trip last week when I left for the UP, I lost a half an hour of travel time due to my newest sponsor, 4-wheel campers. You know, I went out to Sacramento, got the Model M installed on my truck. I got the lithium battery, the solar panels. I slept in there. I popped it up where I can pop it up wherever I go. But that damn thing cost me time traveling, and I'll tell you why. Because every time I stopped to get gas or a snack, somebody walked up to me and goes, "What is that?" One guy, he was like, "I can't believe it. I've been researching these things. And here I get to see one in person. So I got to undo the lid and pop the top up." No, that only takes a few minutes, but it cost me time, but it was worth it. I think you're going to see a lot of 4-wheel campers, especially the Model M for bird hunters, because it leaves your truck a truck and gives you a complete sleeping quarters above your truck. And then you could do anything else you want on the inside with it. You could also do anything you want with Canine Athlete products. Anything. You can get your old dog, new dog again. You get your dog with the fussy stomach, not having a fussy stomach, and you get that dog out there that's putting his all into the day, and you can give him some hydrate and recover in his water. I don't know. I wish we had all this stuff back in the day, but I'm sure glad in the twilight years of my hunting career that all this stuff is out there, especially taking care of the dog. I mean, you know, we take care of our dogs with Purina Pro Plan, okay? But that little extra. And my wife makes me good meals every day, and she makes sure I eat right, and she makes sure I eat right every day. 3 meals a day. But she doesn't give me my vitamins. She doesn't send me out here for an extra hydrate and recover. She doesn't do any of that. That's how Canine Athlete is. They've got everything for you and your dog. If you're an athlete and your canine's an athlete, look at Wilderness Athlete, Canine Athlete products. I'm totally addicted to them. Almost not as long as I've been addicted to my gum leaf boots. You talk about running around in the wet weather. There's one more thing you need besides pike gear. There's one more thing you need. You need yourself a pair of gum leaf rubber, okay? Gum rubber, like 80% gum. These boots are not going to leak. The beauty is they're not going to crack, okay? They will last you for years and years and years. You'll just want a new pair of them just because you haven't bought anything in a while. You know, you can kind of count on buying a pair of boots and wearing a pair of leather boots out in a year or 2 or 3. But you buy yourself a pair of Gum Leaf USA while they last, while we can still get them. And if you listen to this show for another half a dozen years, you'll still be wearing the Gum Leaf USA boots. Guarantee it. the other thing you'll be doing if you listen to the show for the next, I don't know, 20 years, if I'm around that long, is you're going to be hearing me talk about Purina Pro Plan, because they are the only dog food company that does for the dog world and the conservation world that on a level that no other company could come close. There's a lot of good companies out there. I've been to their seminars. They will tell you, very good companies out there making dog food, but nobody gives back to the dog world like Purina. So in one end, out the other, and then spread the love. Leinenkugel is what I've been drinking now for a month. Now, I will tell you, I'm going to have to probably get a little tougher in jiu-jitsu and sweat a little bit more. It's got a few more calories than my normal old beer I used to drink, and everybody knows what that was. But I have been drinking the hell out of Sunset Wheat and the Red Lager and Oktoberfest. I brought that all up with me on my trip. I was fueled by Leinenkugel. And, you know, everybody needs to be fueled by something. Have you, and lastly, promise. We've seen a lot of people get in the Upland Institute in the last month and a half. Now, I always find that peculiar. It's basically we're in hunting season and you procrastinated and then you got it. Now you don't, you know, yes, it'd be fine if you're going to watch it all win. You know, don't try to get this and think you're going to fix your dog in 1 week. But if your season's going along so far and you know you're going to need some work next year on your dog, and that's fine. Especially your first season dog, you're going to need work. Get the Upland Institute, start watching it in your spare time, start implementing it wherever you can, and you will have a better dog, period. And behind the dog, you know, I do have to mention behind the dog. I know you're, please, Ron, because if you haven't skipped by now, I don't know when you're going to skip, because I got a lot of people tell me that no matter what, they might listen to the episode, but they're going to hear me stumble my way through this intro, and I guess there's some entertainment value of that at 11 minutes and 43 seconds. Look for the Behind the Dog series coming out real soon on YouTube, okay? We've got other episodes out there for sale, but our first one's going to be coming out on YouTube. I want you to go to YouTube and please click on like and subscribe, okay? This is, if we're going to continue to have Behind the Dog for years to come, and we're going to get into not just breeders, we're going to get into hunt tests, we're going to get into field trials, we're going to get into judging, we're going to get into places to go, because everything falls in Behind the Dog. And we need you to go to YouTube and watch it, click it, subscribe to it, and we can keep going forward. Whew. All right, 12 minutes, 28 seconds. My God. I have got to figure out how to shorten this up for your sake. Anyway, this episode I just recorded, and it speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. I don't even need to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. Just listen to it. Learn something. And realize there's a big world of dog training out there, and there's a lot of ways to get it done. And Mike's way is one of them.
Get up at 5 to go find his collar.
Well, no, that was this morning. He had to get up at 5.
No,
I found my transmitter this morning. I still have a collar out in the woods.
Oh, we still don't have the...
I found it.
But I thought the collar you were using to find...
We were using my transmitter to find Mike's transmitter.
I'm talking about the collar I lost in the morning.
You didn't?
Yeah, you just forgot that part of the story.
He fell and
I had my 550 in my game bag.
I remember you lost the antenna.
No, first I lost a collar out of my game bag.
A TT.
In the middle of an Aspen Cup.
Like a $300 collar, right?
Well, I don't know what
they're all $325. Yes, it's manufacturer's suggested retail price. Yes.
Then he lost the antenna, and then he
off
lost
my alpha, and then I lost the whole alpha.
I'm so embarrassed.
And then I lost my gun.
And I was excited to come up here and meet Mr. Mike Lardy.
So embarrassed.
So, Mike, I got to ask you. In fact, people don't know. We're live. Of course we've been live. That's how it starts. Okay. See, I'm with Mike Lardy and Jennifer Broome, and it's a crazy way how this all came together. Don't be laughing, Jennifer. She's gonna lose it. Oh, good Lord. Maybe we can put the lav mic on your ear like an earring.
Good.
You wouldn't get all the throat noise.
We're good.
So I was fortunate enough through some friends, Pat Burns actually, right? That's how I got a hold of Mike, and you got How did you get a hold of me, Jennifer?
I just called you out on and said, who the hell are you?
She wanted some pins for grouse hunting in the Upper Peninsula.
That's what it
I don't
was.
know
She
if
wanted
that was
the
it.
exact coordinates of where to go.
She's like, hey, you're from Michigan.
Yeah. Could
But,
you give me some coordinates?
So I was excited to meet both of these people. I had talked to Mike on the phone before. I talked to Jennifer like too many times.
We had many dates
And then
together.
she called me one day. She goes like, hey, when it's windy out, how do you hunt sharptails in the wind? I'm like, oh, I think
You
that's
don't. You said you don't.
You go to the bar.
No, and I hunted for like 8 hours that day.
Yeah. We might have to have another pod. Well, we're going to have another podcast because I want to introduce, but the reason I'm having this particular podcast tonight at Grouse Camp is I've been a dog person, what I call a dog. We all call dog people. We're dog men, dog women. I don't know, for close to 40 years, I've had dogs, read about dogs, wanted to be a field trialer. I told you I wanted to have a Tennessee Walker, found out I was afraid of horses. I've done a lot of harebrained things, but all along the way, I've always been a pointing dog person. But I read wildfowl, waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited. I used to read Field Dog Stud Book. And I knew your name, Mike, from the Labrador world. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't know two more things about the Labrador world except the name Mike Lardy. Can you give us a little the why? Why? Because and this is coming from a total honesty. I want you to jump in with some questions that might prompt Jennifer because you know his history, you know Mike. But I really don't know. I did not read anything. Sometimes I'll do research. How did this whole thing come to where your name is synonymous with the field trial world?
Well, I started training more than 40 years ago. I'm retired now, and I had golden retrievers, and my parents had golden retrievers and Brittany Spaniels, and I had a couple of young dogs, and I went and trained with a trainer from Minnesota, Jim Kappas. And when I got back, I had intended to work in my profession, which was wildlife management, but people started nobody knew in Wisconsin really knew how to use a collar, so I started.
This is like the early first,
where there were a lot of people who didn't use a collar and actually were very anti-collar, and a lot of people who used it. And I was kind of anti-collar after having trialed out in the West in the late 70s as an amateur. And so I started kind of combining the programs of what you'd call were called the tennis shoe trainers back then. So if you had like D.L. Walter's book, Training Retrievers to Handle, it was all about how to teach everything. And then you had, and I'm generalizing.
Right.
Then you had the collar people who thought everything was, force, if you will, was the main thing. And I kind of brought those two things together. Teach a lot with a force foundation. And I think that's what made our program innovative, and our dogs had a lot of style, and my amateurs were very successful with them. So
is that because people could take the style out? I know this sounds like a softball question. Overuse of the collar would take the style out.
That's
of the
true
dog.
in any breed, absolutely.
I've only seen it in judging dogs, but the only time I can really recognize it is in the retrieve, which of course that's what retrievers do.
But especially in the blind retrieve, when you're talking about what a field trial retriever has to do, like get in the water from 175 yards away, or go through a pothole,
and
go straight through it and do it with enthusiasm. You have to have a lot of teaching, but you also have to have a force foundation.
You have to have a way to steer. You got to have a steering wheel on it.
They've got to understand. I call it the send in the Marine attitude. They're trained to do it. They do it bravely and with determination, but they know they have to do it.
Yeah.
So
it's court-martial if they don't do it.
So, and they do it proudly.
Yeah.
I mean, they like, I can do this. But
I have a question for you, because my first introduction to the e-collars was the Tritronics Judge. Was the first model I think I had.
Was that the
plugs.
A170? Oh,
With the
yours,
plugs.
you even had plugs. I started
yes,
before that.
Well, that was going to be my question, because the technology today, where we've got 21 different levels, and we can use them as cues, and we can use them light, and then we can use them heavy, momentary, continuous. I remember ruining my first lab because either I had no idea how to collar condition a dog, a lab, a dog in general, and the plug was either too light or it burned them, but either way, I didn't know what a true collar conditioning program.
Right, and part of the word collar conditioning, I mean, sad to say, in the beginning was get them tolerant of it. And now we don't really being tolerant of mild levels of correction isn't really that big a deal. But in the beginning,
there really wasn't the mild.
I mean, you had an A170. It was all or nothing, baby.
Yeah.
So you had to
finger in the socket.
You had to really work hard to teach them to do the right thing, and for them to understand that they wouldn't get in trouble as long as they tried. That was sort of the fundamental part of our program. As long as you're trying, you're not going to get corrected for making a mistake. You're going to get corrected when you quit trying.
And as long as they know, you know that they know.
Right.
You can read that. And that's another
but
level.
It becomes especially demanding when all you have is one level of correction.
Yeah.
So if you could do that with the A170, imagine what you can do today.
Who was doing that? Did you have some mentors in the field trial world that were like thinking, Mike, what are you doing with a collar? Because it couldn't have been too many years before that there was really no collars, right?
Well, the collar had been around for quite a while. Rex Carr is sort of like the father of modern retriever training in California, and he developed a lot of the methods. Now, we all changed in one form or another the approach we took with it, but the fundamental method has remained remarkably similar, even though the way it's applied is actually completely different than the way it started. So did I have a mentor? Jim Kappas was a mentor, and I think one of the great things, I think it's true in a lot of dog games, but in a competitive arena like field trials, retriever field trials. There's only
one first place.
There's only one first place,
yeah.
And you might have to beat 50 dogs. So many people are so willing to share what they know. And Jim was, the only trainer in the Midwest who really knew how to use the collar. And I didn't end up using it the way he uses it, absolutely.
Right.
But he helped me get going, and he helped a lot of people get going.
What do you think was your approach different because the collars started getting just a smidgen better, or was your approach different? I mean,
my approach was different because I had started being anti-collar and using the tennis shoe methods, if you will. D.L. Walters has 5-legged lining patterns, all these drills and stuff. And Bill Hillman wrote a really interesting book way back in the day called Methods and Concepts of 20 Top Professionals. And, several of them would acknowledge that they have 3 good whistles in their dog at a blind retriever field trial. They're going to get 2, maybe 3 whistle stops. But they're tennis shoe trainers. They don't have the dog's not running under a big threat out there. He might... And so
I just picked up on this because I had to ask you. I know a lot of my listeners aren't going to understand that term. That means running your dog down.
That might mean run them down, yeah. But it also came to describe the overall approach of teaching and patterning. You were patterning your dog on back. You'd see them wind up. Dead bird, dead bird, dead bird. They'd be winding their dog up and the dog would start to rock and back. And if you ran enough pattern blinds that way, you could get the dog to go.
Yeah.
And if you sort of taught him to sit on the whistle, you might get 2 or 3 good whistles before he stopped. Those were the tennis shoe folks. Then you had the highly successful collar trainers whose dogs did not necessarily run with the greatest style, but did stay under control. And it was I feel like what I tried to do was bring those 2 worlds together.
Is it? And you said this because you were kind of anti-collar in the beginning, and it's funny. I've never felt comfortable other than using my collar for finding my dogs in the woods and chasing the deer. I will honestly, I'm totally inept with collar conditioning. But the first couple dogs that I trained, I did it basically out of the net. Remember the NAB, the Green Book, Jennifer? Mm-hmm. I trained it out of the Green Book. I literally had a pigeon on a pole over a pulley, and I pulled it down like a marionette puppy. And when he moved forward, I took a little riding crop and smacked him right across the withers. Seemed to work pretty good for him, you know. And I might
try that.
Maybe that'll work.
I like the pulley going up and down.
Oh, that's great. You want to see a dog go like this a couple times? So I would say...
What's old is new again.
everything goes back into fashion. So that resonates with me when you say, you know, like anti-collar, because I saw too many, I will say, friends and colleagues just using a high stimulation because the dog's just running without doing any foundation training, expecting this collar to speak to this dog. Right. No, we all know it's a third or fourth
the
language.
retriever world, the competitive retriever world, has had a systematic program for a long time. The programs differ from one person to another, but nobody in the last 30 years, you know, takes the collar out of the box, puts it on their dog and says, well, let's see how this works.
Right.
You know, it's all now.
Right.
Not all the programs are the same, but they're all systematic to some extent.
So your approach, trying to blend the two of them, was that like the norm, or were you the abnorm? I was
the abnorm.
Okay.
Very much.
Were colleagues thinking, Mike, you can't be that nice to a dog? I don't mean it that way, but I mean, what was like the critique, would you say?
I think we had our dogs running pretty well right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. I would say the proving ground is our national championship. You know, you can win a few field trials, but
you can have a good day.
You can have a good day.
Yeah.
But the proving ground for the method really became at the national level, where, you know, you're competing against dogs from all over the country.
Yeah.
And you know, our dogs have done exceptionally well at national championships and national amateur championships.
So, and again, these are coming from the heart questions, because I don't know this world. How much is the dog and how much is the trainer, or is it a 50-50 thing?
It's always part of both.
Right.
I don't care what the venue is.
You
it's
get the best dog in
you
the
can't
world
make
with bad trainers.
You can't make a silk purse out of a Sauzier. I don't care how good of a trainer you are. And
could you make a silk purse look like a Sauzier?
You can definitely do that. But, you know, I always say you try to make the good dogs great and the fair dogs good, but you're not going to make a fair dog a great dog just because you're a good trainer.
Jennifer, you've done the field trials with your labs too, right? Mm-hmm. Is that how you met Mike?
It is. I started off as a hunting dog trainer, hunting dogs, particularly with labs. And
would you call it upland or waterfowl? Because I know you have
upland and waterfowl.
Both.
All breeds.
Yeah.
For flushing, pointing dog, and retrievers. And when I got serious with my own retrievers and I was in hunt test, I decided to get involved with the field trials. And it's funny because the first old timers that I met from my area, when they saw me at a demonstration at one of the sportsman shows, they were so sweet. They came over. It was Bob Larson and I forget the other guy's name, and they said, you should get into field trials with us. And actually they were like, you shouldn't, but you should. And that's who I started training with. So I got into field trials with a couple of old timers. And I mean, they were
maybe older than Mike and I.
They were in their 70s, I think. Wasn't Bob in his 70s probably when I even met him?
I doubt he was that old then.
Okay,
he was probably
Whitney Ralph, Bob Larson and Whitney Ralph, and they were sort of my two mentors to start in Connecticut. And they gave me an invite to go down to Florida 16 years ago now, and when I first started going down, I started taking Mike's clinics as a mentor. And
so, did your clinics travel around, Mike, or did everybody come to your kennel? I don't know.
Mostly they came to my kennel, but occasionally I would travel around.
And that involves, again, these are the bulk of my audience. Although I'm always trying to get more retriever people in there because there's a lot more of you people than pointing dog people. That involves all the technical ponds and big properties and I mean, and those ponds. Maybe explain a technical pond, because I'm saying it like everybody's going to understand it. But my question leading to that sounds like Mr. Peterson. 4-part question:
Is there only one way to build a technical pond?
No, there are, but building a good technical pond is technical. And all we do, people, when I have to fill out what I do for a living, like a retriever club will have a form that says, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm a dog line straightener. Because basically everything revolves around teaching dogs to go straight. Now there's a lot of other skills, and but it's only half a joke. And so technical ponds help you create black and white circumstances, and I don't mean just for correction. I just mean so they understand the concept well of going straight.
Right.
So and doing it in an efficient manner. Like you could have a big round pond in front of your house, and you want to cut a third of it on one side, and it takes them 10 minutes to swim across. It's hard, and there are no decision points along the way. Right. They just gradually fade in. Whereas if you have a corner, a channel, a pothole, there are decision points at which you can read the dog is playing his hand, you can stop him, show him what he needs to do, and deal with refusals to do so correctly. Does that come in
with the gym shoe work? I mean, do you have to... I'm trying to picture, you get a dog going across this field, comes to an obstacle being a round pond, you want him to go through it.
Handling. Toot.
Oh, stop, turn, look at me.
Early on, there's a lot of attrition where you...
Yeah, it's early. I remember in 2008, I drove out to train with you where I think the Nationals in 2008 were Wisconsin and Minnesota or something. And so your crew was off at the Nationals, and I came to train with you, and my dog Treat was a youngster. And I remember you helping me doing channel marks. So there was the attrition training.
Channel marks.
Channel marks. So he'd have channels on his property, and he'd be throwing a bumper of her learning how to get in the water, go out in a channel, and do a mark before she could even handle. She was a puppy.
Right. So we do a lot of, the lingo gets complicated, but I call it conventional de-cheating. I did it, I know you're going to ask me about my wire hair later, but I did it with my wire hair. She learned to do cheating singles when she was eight months old.
Cheating single is one where they see it thrown? Is that
they see it thrown, and they have to go through the corner of the pond.
Just go on young puppy instinct to...
Without the concept of having them handle it.
Yeah, like she didn't stop to the whistle or anything else.
No turning, looking at you or anything like that.
So there's a lot of... In the old days, I would say people thought they couldn't do anything until the dog was...
A year.
Or handling and collar condition, all that. But there's so much you can do with a puppy, teaching them how to go straight. The technical pond helps you teach it. It's not because it provides a place where you can burn them for not going straight. It's because...
And there's not a billboard out there that says, dog, this is what I need you to do.
Yeah, you can, with attrition, which is like calling them back and trying again, moving up and throwing it again, you can teach a dog who's never had a collar a remarkable amount. And it makes you a better dog trainer.
And it's giving that dog a foundation that he's kind of trusting you, and you're not...
And once he is collar conditioned, and you start to enforce it, he goes, yeah, I know what you want.
Right. Yeah. It sounds almost kind of simple, but what's the process like for, and I don't mean for every dog, but I've got a 6-month-old lab, let's just say. Would you be doing some of these exercises way before 6 months?
Yep, some of them.
Yeah.
It totally depends on the dog. And some dogs are very immature, and if you call them back for running around a pond, they're going to not go because they haven't really... Right. They might not have the bottom for that. I can tell you my wire hair, I could call her back 20 times and she'd go again. Right. So I was able to use that technique. Other dogs, you might not use that technique. Right. So depends a lot on their temperament. And
when we used to judge the little bit of water work we have in a NAB utility test, I always found it mentally amazing how the dog would choose its own place to come out of the water. And I was like, wait a minute, that's way far. You're going way farther away from here. We just threw a duck for you out here at 50 yards, and instead of coming back to its owner.
Yeah, but they usually take the path of least resistance.
But she said take too much water. We call it most of the time They have land-eye dominance.
I like that.
They
I wish
want-
I'd have had that saying a few times.
They want to come back by the shortest route, like 9. And it doesn't matter how subtle the shoreline appears. Like you think you're on a square shoreline.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it's slightly shorter to go over here to the
they
right,
pick that
they
up.
go to the right every time.
And even if it comes up through sticks and wires,
They
it
have
doesn't matter to
an
the
internal
dog.
calculus of the shortest route.
And then, so you've got to kind of mold all that, because there's a point where I don't want to say you don't want the dog you want the dog to think for itself, but you also are giving it like you said, the Marine Corps, like I'm giving you a battlefield.
It's such a balance.
Yeah.
Attitude, balance, and control. I mean, you have to be under control. But you know, these dogs have to do an incredible amount of work with that. They have to be thinking and feel free and relaxed to do their marks properly, to hunt for a flyer with a good hunt, to go get a memory bird that's halfway across the county.
Right.
They have to operate freely. So it is
I was going to say, they got to be feeling good.
Yeah,
right?
so training is a real balance. I need control, but I've got to have good attitude, and you can't go too high one way or the other. Too much great attitude and no control, or too much control and no attitude.
That's their ABC has been one of my anachronisms throughout my career that I learned from you is attitude, balance, control. And if you have too much control, you get a bad attitude. If you don't have enough control, or was it? If you don't have enough, attitude, balance, control. If you don't have enough control, if you have too much control, you get a bad attitude.
Right.
If you don't have enough, you can you just get a dog that's just out there. So it's about balancing that, and I'm always working on that, because when you try to control a dog too much and you see them get sour and they drop their tail and they might get worried on stuff, and it's a big time balance.
Yeah, and this is a diversion, because I want to get back into like your career, not like a day-by-day thing in numbers, but I remember, I just would like both of your thoughts on this. I told you guys I was calling this friend of mine that was west of us, and he came to a NAVDA test with a 3-year-old German Wirehair. He is a home trainer, just read everything he's learned, he read out of a book, never joined a NAVDA chapter, never had a mentor. But apparently he had a better reading comprehension than I did in high school, because he had a dog named Grouse. And he brought Grouse to a NAVDA utility test. And this was 20 years ago, when if somebody even prized, it was you were buying drinks, right? You weren't seeing a lot of 204s, once in a blue moon, right? He hunted this dog. He used to go to the Dakotas. He hunted this dog for 3 years, duck hunted it, pheasant hunted it, taught it to heel, taught it all. It's just normal. I never saw in all my years of judging a better performance when you're talking about the balance, and the dog looked as happy going out as it did coming in. Everything just, I was just in awe. Like when we do the drag of the duck, right? Which would be like, well, it's not a blind retrieve, but we don't give them a nose score, so it's kind of like a blind retrieve. But they're using their nose to get there. That dog ran as fast as he could to get there, and ran even faster back with the duck, and just gave it to his owner. And I was like, how do you get that? So here's where my question's going for both of you. Could you compete with a dog, whatever venue it is, if you just hunted it for a couple of years, or is it such a difficult? I'm going to the Scott Goldman part, right? Could you take a hunting dog that just had that thing, and then could you compete with it?
Probably not if he had hunted too long. I'm a big believer in my field trial Labradors getting hunting experience at some stage. Mm-hmm. Usually as puppies, and then again after they know how to do blind retrieves. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be like quartering the field for pheasants while they're going through their pattern blind training. Now, I can tell you the best dog I ever had, and I think the best dog in field trials, was Candlewood's Tanks-A-Lot. She won 3 national championships and also had over 100 Derby points. She retrieved hundreds of wild pheasants. And in the national championships that she won, A lot of times you say, well, there's always luck involved.
Sure.
You got to have the right luck.
There's luck.
But she got a couple of really tough flyers in a couple of the nationals that she won. And she went out there and smoked them. And that came from wild bird hunting. Because, a wild bird, a dog knows, I got to get right to that spot right now.
Right.
Doesn't matter that it went, 60 yards out from the gun.
Right.
She could get those tough birds because of her pheasant hunting experience.
Wow.
So I think pheasant hunting experience.
It wouldn't be the path you would suggest, but wild bird experience is.
I suggest it with puppies and with
So coming
older
from my
dogs.
gun dog background, getting into field trial retrievers later, I'm still a fan today of their whole first year and a half is I want to take them hunting. And I want them to learn how to quest, and I want them to learn how to track and really, really be good markers of live birds. And then when I go to my field trial training, I think my dogs are phenomenal and they're live flyers because they won't even, if they see where it lands, if they don't get out to the point, if the bird's not there, they're going to start questing and they're going to start looking for it.
They're not going to be looking for you for help.
Yeah, but also if we get stuck in the area, they'll put on what I call as an intelligent hunt, is they'll go out to the area of the fall and then they'll just start tracking. So I do love having a young dog in its first year and a half going out and really learning how to quest and use their nose and track. But then there comes a point where you want that training involved in between that later you can handle them.
And you got to be careful with a really high-powered dog. I mean, you can't, if you have a really high-powered dog, you may not want to give him the luxury of a lot of hunting.
And is that necessarily, and this is another divergent, when you say high-powered dog, I remember I just went down to the Purina VIP thing. That's how I met Pat Burns, and that's how I got your guys' contacts. And we were sitting in the restaurant lobby having drinks, and they kept saying about high-powered, high-powered. And I think of a lab, like 90% of the population, I was like, it's a Labrador. Describe high-powered.
Well, there's good high-powered and there's bad high-powered.
Yeah.
All of the successful dogs are high-powered to one extent or another. You don't have a slug.
You don't make them run fast.
Right. But there are some dogs that are exceptionally high-powered and are a bit of a problem.
They run faster than they think.
And maybe they make noise at the line. They don't heel well. You have to really know what you're doing if you have that kind of dog. And as a professional, a lot of professionals drool over high-powered dogs. That's what they want. One reason is because they're more forgiving,
Yeah, because it's almost like the kid that went to Catholic school, got his knuckles slapped, big deal.
Yeah.
I'm coming back at it for the next day.
But my most successful dogs, while extremely stylish and hard-going, were not like over-the-top high-powered.
Now, I know you've got your dog, and I don't say you got your dogs, but you mentioned the name Mary Candlewood earlier.
I actually...
Mary Howley.
Mary Howley, Candlewood Kennels.
Oh,
yes.
Candlewood Kennels, I'm sorry. She was not a trialer, she was a breeder?
She was a trialer too.
Oh, was
I mean,
she?
she owned Lottie initially.
Okay.
She's owned a number of good field trial dogs, field champions and so forth.
You did some of her dogs, or did your personal stock come from hers, or?
Well, first of all, I didn't have very many personal dogs, but the most successful dogs, many of the successful dogs that we trained from the mid-'80s to the mid-2005 were Candlewood dogs. Candlewood, there were Candlewood Tanks a lot, Candlewood Super Tanker.
Bonnie, was she?
No, she wasn't a Candlewood dog, but there were a bunch of them.
And is that 100% breeding? I mean, at that point, like, could you? It almost seems like it has to be like, what did Mary put together?
Well, she was a very. I don't know what the.
You don't know her
key,
secret sauce.
I don't know what the key was, but she
Right.
paid attention to what she was doing. I wouldn't say she applied like scientific
Right.
kind of knowledge, but she had a wealth of common sense experience, and would know, I would never breed to that dog because, his sister is the one who, when bred to that male, produced that dog that, she knew.
She can remember that.
She was like a genetic, before we had genetic tests for everything,
Abigail
she had all the data in her head.
So one funny thing is back in I was around 1994, when I started getting involved with Labrador Retrievers and training, I drove out to Wisconsin to Mary Howley's to buy a lab from her.
Okay.
And that was, I think, in 1994. Yep.
Really?
And I had family in Mosinee, Wisconsin. And we drove out and got a beautiful yellow lab and from Mary. Yeah, before, when I was just training hunting dogs.
And you never trialed that dog or anything?
No,
and you got the dog from one of the best breeders?
Well, because that's
And
what we researched.
Mary was very good about, this litter is for a hunting home, this litter is for a pet home, this litter is for a high caliber field trial home. She wasn't selling her top field trial dogs to pet homes.
Right.
And she wasn't trying to get a field trialer to buy something that wouldn't, she was breeding for her customers, her different types of customers.
The previous one before that was from Jan Peterson of Top Gun. And then also Treven. We got our other one from Treven.
Val and Jay Walker. Yep.
Yeah, so when I was getting involved in getting my first retrievers, I basically went to probably three of the top that you possibly could at the time, which was Mary Howley.
Was that accidental luck? Or?
Oh, that wasn't accident. That was a lot of research. That
Okay.
was Jan Peterson, Mary Howley, and Val Walker. And
These were all women. Val, Mary.
Jay and Val Walker of the Treven line.
They
kennels.
both were.
Yeah.
Getting a good dog involves, you can, as you know, it doesn't matter what the breed is or whatever,
Right.
that you can plan all the best pedigree in the world and it doesn't work out, or you can breed a great litter and they don't get in very good homes and it doesn't work out. There's got to be the stars have got to align for everything to work out. And it's hard to have a dog that wins field trials. It is insanely competitive today. It is so difficult to win a field trial. And to become a field champion or run a national, you have to win a field trial. And there are lots of really good dogs that don't win a field trial.
That almost breaks. Well, I guess there's probably a lot of good race car drivers that never come in the top 10 too, probably, right? I mean,
and then when you see a dog that does really well, you're like, that's amazing, because to consistently do well is really hard.
So, Jennifer, you're familiar with the NABA scoring. Cooperation is one of our 7 tenets of the puppy and cooperation score. So we call cooperation what the dog does for you naturally. And some do more of that for you, and some do a lot less. Mike, what if I'm talking in the Labrador world, do you guys use the word cooperation, or is there another term for it?
Well, we use the word, but we don't judge on that basis.
Okay.
Our judging is very, it's very different than NAVDA,
Sure.
Clearly. It's performance-based. Did he know where the mark was or not? And judges...
Did he impress the judge?
Yeah, and the judges have to... A good field trial judge doesn't interpret too much of what's going on. He only judges what happened.
Okay.
The dog went right to the bird. He can't say, well, he winded it when he went right by it. I think he got lucky. He can only judge what happened.
Right.
And so you get a little less of those subjective kind of scores, like descriptors of cooperation, desire to please.
A little more white and black. He did it.
He did it or he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of our trials boil down to the last series. There are 10 dogs in the last series, and there's a really tough watermark. And 2 dogs get it with a hunt. 1 dog nails it. The other dogs handle. Dog nailed it, often wins a field trial.
So handling the dog is legal, like
on a mark.
On a mark.
It's definitely legal.
Right.
It's so competitive today.
You'd like to not.
You really avoid handling on a mark at all costs.
So ideally, it's just send a dog and be quiet.
Exactly.
And you want it all to just.
And they really reward independent, courageous, and persistent hunts. But it better not be too long.
They also don't want to be bored.
I remember my first experience at the Retriever National Amateur. It was Randy's place in Minnesota. Which Randy?
Randy Whitaker?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In Michigan, yep.
No, but it was in Minnesota.
Spangler? Randy
Yes.
Spangler.
Yes.
In,
Yes. And I drove...
that, no, Randy Spangler's Wisconsin.
I drove cold turkey out there to go throw birds. That was my first experience, and I stayed the whole time to throw birds, and I stayed the whole series, the whole national. And I remember the 10th series, and it was a quad, and I watched, I think, one of the dogs pick it up perfectly, and I'm like, oh my god, the dog didn't win. But I hadn't, because I was a thrower and I hadn't kept track of what happened for all 10 series, I thought this dog had it in the bag, because a dog I think that handled in the last series ended up winning, but it must have had better scores previously, you know? So yeah, it was a learning curve for me, because, you know, we're all kind of crying because this dog just did this monster water quad in the 10th series. And
it didn't win.
It didn't win.
I bet you its owner was crying too.
Yeah, it was quite a learning
It may have handled earlier.
Totally,
Any
you
number
know?
of things may have happened.
I don't know how the trials work as far as how many dogs. It sounds like you could have a lot of dogs on just a regular trial day, right?
It can be anywhere from 35 to 105.
So the organization putting it on has to be, they're ready for that with help and all that stuff.
They try.
They try. Well, I'm sure we can all make a complaint about how test days go sometimes.
They do a great job.
They do, and they forgot the ducks, and they don't have any blanks.
They're all volunteers. They do a really good job.
They do a really good job. We thank them at the end of every day. And this is just, again, a Ron question. Let's say there's 100 dogs competing for first place. On any given day, could half of them have won? Like, could...
Oh, if you look at the program and you say, well, I would say no.
Okay.
I would say on any given day, 20 of them could win.
20. That's pretty tight, 20%.
But, you know, there's always some upcomer you don't know about or whatever.
Right. It's not like, going back to the racetrack, just because all the cars can do 200 miles an hour in a lap, they're not all equal.
Well, and you've got dogs that will win, and it's hard to win an open, who will win one open in their lifetime. And that's an achievement.
Yeah.
It is tough to win an open.
No, open means like...
Open all age.
All age.
And you have some dogs that'll win 3 or 4 a year.
Wow.
You know, for 4 or 5 years. And, I mean, they're just like, knock your socks off. Consistent, amazing dogs.
So when you see that dog, like, I always look at the dog's like eyes, the way like especially when they deliver like a retrieve. I've always found like the dog to kind of, you know, turns his head. Is that a training error, or is that also like a genetic? Do you think it's? Do you take any stock in the eye?
You know
contact?
what? There's so many different ways dogs run. Some come in and you think they're being disobedient, and they turn their head and everything else. You get the bird away, and they're like, boom, ready to go.
Yeah.
I don't think you can make any generalizations about the way they appear.
Okay.
I mean, it's true. A good dog, I mean, it's wonderful to watch. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because they have to remember so much what goes on there. And the number one trait in a successful field trial dog is intelligence.
Yeah, that's a hard thing for people to get their head around. Like intelligence. You know, we think of it as like reading, writing, arithmetic, but...
I think it's not only intelligence, but it's composed intelligence.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've both seen so many retrievers and of all breeds in our career that just are so emotional and vocal and can't control their emotions. And a good dog that can truly control its emotions to the point where it can concentrate, that's a pretty amazing dog.
So, you know, we call that, or I call it, and everybody else does too, I didn't make this up, obviously, impulse control. Like working with the puppies early, you know, from the waiting to be fed, waiting at the door, stacking them like, you know, a show dog, right? That hands-on stuff. Is that part of puppy rearing for the field trial world too?
Absolutely.
It probably wasn't back in the day.
Absolutely, but can I pop your bubble? One of my favorite dogs I ever trained was Big River Bonami, and she would run out 10 yards. Well, not on me. She'd probably go 3 yards on me, 10 yards on her owner. With each, they'd shoot the gun. She'd run out 10 yards. They'd throw the bird. She'd run back to my side, turn around just to see it hit the ground. And she'd do that on every mark and usually marked it better than anybody else. I won a Canadian National with her. She was a
Run out, turn around, come back.
She was a 9-time, in 1985, she won 9 all-age stakes, 5 open, 4
Which is
amateur.
like she broke, she returned. She came back, she broke, she marked, she returned. She came back, God, she just nailed the quad.
Now, I'm not
No,
these
that's
days.
bad.
These days, you wouldn't get away with that.
Right.
But was she composed? Well, in her own way, she was. But she could. I mean, she was an
And I
unbelievable
wonder what would
dog.
happen if you tried to take that out of that dog too?
Oh, I tried.
Okay, I was looking for a philosophical answer.
I tried. That's why she would only go from here. I mean, I wasn't brutal with her or anything, but we tried. She would go much less far out with me than she
But
did
you still
with her
had to
owner.
just bolt out, turn around, come back.
Yes.
And still be able
And
to
there were
mark.
so many judges who were determined to throw her out for it, and they'd go, oh, no, yeah. And then she'd go out there and just smack it, and they'd go, oh my God.
Part of her ADD, Tourette's.
But I bet you if somebody was on the sidelines, like just getting into it, be like, well, that dog's pulled.
Probably.
Right?
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
like, because every other dog I saw.
And you know, honestly, part of the problem we have in some Labrador Retrievers today is we didn't have a pure standard that we should have enforced a long time ago. So we went to, I captained a team that went to England to compete at a county fair. And Connie Cleveland was running, and it was relatively simple tasks, but for our dogs, they had to do some stuff like jump fences. And there was a water single. It was a bumper thrown 20 yards away. And Connie Cleveland's dog kind of yawned, whined, just, got zeroed on it. Ooh. And I was I wasn't outraged outwardly, but
You were like, what?
yeah, we were like, you got to be kidding me. This is a nice dog. You know what? If we had done that with our field trial dogs 40 years ago, we'd have a lot fewer problems now.
So this is my huge respect and love of being introduced to NAVDA now about, 12, 15 years ago. Is it taught me an entirely different world, coming from the retriever background and dealing with so much vocalization and just a lot of the side effects that we deal with, and a lot of hacking. Heel, sit, sit, sit. Whereas NAVDA, you're like one command. Send with one command, right? And they get their bird, and you can't tell them, here, heel, like diarrhea of the mouth.
Right.
And I think it elevated me as a trainer because I really learned to train much more silently. Like, I tell you to do something once, and now it's your job to go do it.
Right.
And that's been my greatest respect and love.
Which goes
for
to
NAVDA.
like you're talking about that trial in England. Like, even though that was you're talking about the handler side of it, they also want the dog to act just as like I've been in the end zone before, and I'm still interested in the game even if we're behind.
Yeah. And it's like,
I know we're losing.
you could be crying that, NAVDA, if you're in your duck search and you're chasing your duck, you'd be screaming and crying, but not when you're in the holding line waiting, for your marks to go off.
Right.
And so, there's just such a different element of it that it educated me a lot, and it's expanded me a lot as a dog trainer that I use not only in my versatile dogs, but I brought over to my retrievers. Like, I'm going to tell you something once, and you got to do it.
Was that a segue or was that a segue?
That was
Did
a
you hear what she just said, Mike?
Versatile dog?
Way.
Mike Lardy, the man most known for the most everything. Do you know his history, Jennifer? Like, statistically? We don't need, but I mean...
But you know what?
He's won a lot of shit.
No, I think complete respect to him without tooting his horn.
If you could do a little...
I can't, because, Mike, I need you to brag a little bit. Because, what have you done? What give us a little bit of your resume, your high points, brag a little bit, because it's amazing.
Well, you're putting me in an uncomfortable spot, but I view our national record as being kind of the most, what really validated our method and led a lot of people to adopt it.
Yep.
And that was, I've won 7 nationals, but more importantly, I've had and I can't tell you what the number is, but I think we've had 22 national wins. So we've had 3 amateurs win the National Open. We've had numerous national amateur winners, and I think in the old days it was like the pros kind of kept the amateurs in the dark. And we had a really strong amateur team. And what made me prouder of my career than that was I had some clients for 40 years. You know, and they were very successful, and we worked together for 40 years, and I'm proud of that part too. And I've had some really good trainers that I got to work with, that Pat Burns, Andy Attar, Dave Smith, Ray Voigt. They worked for me for, you know, 6 to 12 years in Ray's case. And
so that's as important to you as
and the relationship
else.
with them. But I really had a lot of great amateurs, and more than anything, I had a lot of really good dogs. You know, if you came to our kennel in the summer, you know, Ray would have 4 dogs in his house at night, and I would have 3 of the dogs in my house at night. When they got to be about 7 years old or 6 years old, and they were still competing in field trials and they were living with us still, I mean, they were in the house with us, a lot of them, especially the bitches that we love so much.
So Mike has, you know, a record that'll probably never be matched, and it was at least 20 years ago that I started going down to Florida, and I flew down just to attend one of his clinics, and it was so funny because I had all your videos, you know, and they were from even before, and you looked so differently, and then all of a sudden, like, there you were doing your clinic, so I'm like, I recognize the voice, but that doesn't look like you. And, you know, you did definitely went through a transformation, you know. And I remember being so nervous just to be there auditing, you know, and I flew down just to audit. I was so honored and so excited to be like in the gallery and to be auditing. And then I got the intestinal fortitude up to like sign up as a handler. And remember, I sent you a letter from however many years ago. I'm like, Mr. Lardy, like I'm just
Mr. Lardy.
Yeah, I just like I'd love to be a handler in one of your clinics. And I started handling in them. And you know, we started to develop a friendship because then it got to the point where I was doing like your sound system and I was gunning for you.
Right,
and I was like bringing my ATV and stuff like that. And so it's been a 20-year relationship. I also remember Dennis and I met 15 years ago, and Dennis Voigt has become a dear friend who just left this camp today. And when Dennis was horse camping on your property during one of your seminars, and I went there, and I remember Ray and Pat, who have become very dear friends of mine, they're like, so Jen, what's your deal? You know, and you know, who are you? What's your deal? And we just became really, really good friends. So literally, like for 20 years, like Mike, I learned from him. I was intimidated by him. I was like, it was just a student. And then
And now it's all different. When I
well,
saw
wait
you
a
guys
minute.
hunting.
But here's what's kind of
And then
funny.
she shot 3 grouse today, and I only got 1.
I'm sorry.
And she
and
kind of
3 woodcocks.
She kind of rubbed it in, didn't she?
She rubbed your nose in it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, the
so
guy
sorry.
that she thought was so good. Oh,
Shot his ass. I kicked his ass in the hunting field, which was way more than field trials. But I remember I finally got 2 of my dogs to the point where I was running all age. And the thing is like, I'm a professional trainer of hunting dogs, not of field trial dogs. Right. And I would spend my winters for 3 months, and I'd be so grateful to be amongst such incredible talent where I just learned and increased my resume. But as soon as I went back to Connecticut in April, I was working my butt off training my hunting dogs. Right. I didn't have the opportunity to train for field trials. And so I was never really competitive, but even when I got to the open all-age stakes, I remember in Jacksonville at Wattlesworth, and I don't know if you remember this, but I was ahead of you, and I was with Kuda.
So you were actually in a competition at the same time.
Yeah, and he's behind me in the holding blind, you know, and I'm like, and it's kind of funny because what kept going through my brain is like, I've been a handler and multiple times at Mike Lardy's clinics. I am not going to get nervous stepping on the mat because I don't care who's judging me. Mike's judged me, so I don't even care. So I wouldn't even be nervous. But I remember it was.
How'd that work for you?
It was good. It was good. I remember this big. You're right behind me. There's big triple, and it was like memory bird, flyer, and they missed it, and it flew into the test.
So the flyers are shot.
Live bird.
And so then they asked me to come back in like 4 dogs. Now, of course, you're behind me again because you have multiple dogs. So my dog is convinced it's a quad because he remembered where that flyer went. And you made some really cute comment or funny comment, like, you know, it was a good mark on the quad because of the previous bird that he had marked that was a no bird. You know, like he went to get the flyer, and now he went to get the previous flyer to go get it.
Do this all over again if it goes wrong?
Oh, totally, yeah. So anyway, my history with Mike has been auditing in his clinics, handling in his clinics, competing, even though I was like, had no right to really be competing at that level.
There,
because I was there. I
Right.
almost, you know, squeaked by, but never, I mean, I got one jam and an open, but I've qualified all age and I've gotten a dog on a derby list. But other than that, I'm not really competitive in field trials. But then the funny thing was 2 years ago, Mike Lardy gets a German Wirehair.
There's the segue.
There's the segue. And who does he call? Me to
Oh.
help him, and I'm like, aren't the tables turned? And what 20 years ago I was at the front yard of his double wide under a tent as an auditor in his first clinic in Boston, Georgia.
And he's calling you for
Now
some
I'm
advice.
standing in his same front yard 20 years later, coaching Mike Lardy with his wire hair, and I'm like, girlfriend, you have done a good job.
That's the same motivation I had when I met Pat in St. Louis. And he says, everybody was throwing out Labrador names. Oh my God, I don't know anything about that stuff. He says, well, you ought to talk to Mike Lardy. He's got a wire hair now. I'm like, wait a minute.
What?
Let me Google Mike Lardy because I thought it was a lab guy. He goes, no, but he's got a.
Now Mike
And then I get all the
Mike is a challenging student. Mike was a challenging student, and I'd kind of be standing there a little intimidated, but I'm like, yeah, Mike, she's not standing still, really. And he was trying to do all his retriever stuff, and I'm like in Navda mode. I'm like, if you told her to heel once, she needs to heel. He's like, heel, here. Whoa. I'm like, no. And I'm a big follower of the Hunt Smith method. Rick Smith is a dear friend and a mentor of mine. Sure. So I'm trying to infuse some of the Hunt Smith stuff, and I'm trying to teach Mike a different methodology with the collar, with the cue system. And he was like, yeah, no. But it took about a year.
I use it some.
Use it some.
Yeah, and Mike has been
Mike, what made you go? And I don't mean that. Your last Labrador died last year. You told me last night, so it's not like you abandoned them. But what made you go to the pointing breeds from all these years of working with Labradors?
Well, several things. It wouldn't be retirement if I were training a lab. I've trained labs
that's
for
a good point.
40 years. A good friend, Mike Stafford, out in Boise, near Boise, Idaho. I've known him for 40 years, and I've hunted behind his dogs. I've hunted behind Yana's grandmother, Yana's mother, and I just liked the way they worked. I'd go out there.
So you're just out on a hunting trip.
I'd go out there and chucker hunt with him and watch these dogs run. So I knew when I had the time for it, I wanted to get one of those dogs.
Yeah.
So and Jeff Funky is the breeder. Mike,
right.
You know, he breeds.
Friend of mine and friend of many of us. Yeah.
And it got me going, but right away I started making a retriever out of her more than a pointing dog. And you know, I
remember that? She's like, I'm going to teach her to sit. I'm like, yeah, you really shouldn't teach her to. Yeah, you really. He had her sitting so well, and I was like, you really shouldn't. And then she did default a couple times.
Yeah, but you know what? In the end, it all worked out. I think it all worked out.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit of a difficult journey for a retriever trainer. First of all, I mean, the stuff I didn't know was so astounding. Aside from the methods she's talking about, just like stuff about having the bird teach the dog. I'm a retriever trainer. I can set up a drill to solve this problem. And so I think retriever training is an art and a science, but I think bird dog training is even more of an art. And you're not necessarily going to be able to, you have to, a lot of stuff with the bird dogs just takes time. People say, oh, well, that's fine for a 1.5-year-old dog. And I'm like, no, she should be steady. She knows what steady is. Why is she moving? I taught her to be steady to retrieve. She shouldn't break here. So I think I've learned, I will make fewer mistakes with my next dog.
Now, I'm going to say this. When we're down in Boston, Georgia, and Madison, Florida, and down the heart around Thomasville, it is bird dog country. Yep. And really when they call bird dog country, and I'm like, oh, I have pointing dogs.
That's pointer
and they
country.
asked, yeah, no, it's pointer and setter, and it's mostly pointer.
Mostly pointer, yeah.
So what we get to deal with, we have these versatile dogs who love to kill and catch and chase. Yeah. And so I still think all day long it is so much easier to train a Flushing dog. Because easier. Yeah. I mean, when we're, and it's been almost 30 years now that I've trained Spaniels and Labrador Retrievers, are all Retriever breeds, and pointing dogs. And even today when we were grouse hunting, I was so much more relaxed hunting over the Betty Cocker and the Lab, because I'm like...
Best name ever for a Cocker Spaniel, by the way.
Betty Cocker, yeah, Betty Cocker. Because that's what I've actually done more so in my 30-year career, is do all of my grouse hunting, woodcock hunting, pheasant hunting, guiding over Flushing dogs. And the element of steadiness and control that I need, of course, I've never owned a pointer, a Brittany, or a setter, which are much, talking to Rick, talking to other mentors of mine, like, they don't want to catch and kill. They don't have that. They are bird dogs. They want to point and then move on. And of course, we have these versatile dogs that just want to catch and kill.
Everything.
Everything. And, yeah.
When you got how old was your Wirehair when you got it? Typical 8-10 week.
Yeah, a little under 8 weeks.
Under 8 weeks. So if you had an 8-week-old Lab, are you doing little things with this thing just like the Lab?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because it wasn't because you didn't want to read about it. You just figured this dog needs to learn this and this and this.
They just need to learn how to learn at that point.
Learn how to learn.
So she was doing all sorts of place board work when, maybe when she was 8 to 10 weeks old, going to place boards, and pretty soon she was retrieving off the place board and casting drills from place board to place board. And she is quite a retriever.
Now, you guys mentioned, or you mentioned it might have bit you a little bit, but where did you think it bit you by doing that early? Because the sit thing I disagree with, but I think you're right. Most people are not going to encourage sit.
I was smart enough not to throw a lot of birds on her retrieving work. It was 90% bumpers, because I knew I didn't want her thinking she could go out there and scoop up a bird anytime she wanted.
Right.
And actually, more of her problems stemmed from using bad birds that she caught.
Okay.
Which, everybody knows about those traps.
Yeah, you
hate to... Bad pen-raised birds. If I had to do it again, I would use, pigeons and launchers and wild birds. And
right.
Now I sort of have the connections to be able to do wild birds.
Right.
I didn't really have that or appreciate how important that was when I got her.
All the years you were trialing, hunting was always on the back burner, probably.
It was on a back burner.
Not back burner, but it took second place in your career.
Our national championship is the second week in November. Ooh. So it makes it pretty brutal to try to get a hunting trip in October. When
you get them in when you can get them in.
Yeah. But I hunted as a kid, so
sure.
I sort of just came back to it.
Yeah. I still want to get a handle on, so do you think it was too much sit and stuff? Because what was the thing you thought, or you said?
I think I should have worked. I just needed to work on more bird dog stuff. Just patience, standing still. Whether you're talking about doing, I later went back and redid her work using Rick's methods, using the woe post and the flank collar and all that, and that helped immensely. Prior to that, I thought I could just, when I was a kid, my dad had Brittany Spaniels. Okay. And my dad was not a dog trainer. And
he was a dog owner.
He was a dog owner.
Yeah.
And we were pretty diehard hunters, and the Goldens did great. But all I remember with that Brittany is the only time we ever shot a bird is when it flushed back towards us. And so...
It was a plusher.
And so...
With a P.
So I was kind of like, by God, this dog is going to point. Like, I had this attitude... Obviously, it's a horrible attitude. Like, I'm going to make it point.
Right.
So when it as a, I don't know, 4-month-old puppy wasn't pointing right away, I was like, all right, I know how to make a dog do stuff. I'll make him point.
I'll make you stop.
Yeah. So that's where I really made my mistake.
So you didn't have the faith in the pointing instinct
And I
It just-
tried to intervene too
okay,
early.
that's
Yeah.
where I was going.
I tried to intervene in the point too early. I should have been letting her do her thing, let the birds teach her, don't try to enforce
Well,
stuff, and I shouldn't have had her on bad birds.
So what I believe is one of the biggest challenges, again, Rick is one of my huge mentors, and Rick got to do the Southern Circuit on the quail, and then they would go out to the prairies, they go up to Canada, and it was wild birds, wild birds, wild birds. And I never get to train on wild birds. My birds are like, birds that are chuckers that I bought,
Right.
pheasants or quail in a pen. And my dog Doozy now, from the time she was a puppy, and I would be in Florida and I would take my ATV out and I'd go all around the property to put my birds out. And she would hit the ground, she would track the ATV, she would track where I got out, and then she'd go in
ran a milk route.
Yeah, she went in the area where the trap was, or even I put a bird, and she'd just stand on the outskirts and wiggle. Because she knew the game.
Right.
And she's quite a tracker. So I think one of the biggest detriments that we have today with the bird dogs, that the average person, is that we don't have access to wild birds, and the wild birds that really teach them. Because I haven't raised a pointing dog pup yet that hasn't been able to catch a propagated bird. And once these versatile dogs catch a bird, they're like, game on.
It doesn't dissolve the instinct. It just teaches them. They
They
learn
can do
whatever
it.
they learn. They think is the right thing.
Yep.
If they caught that bird, that dog thinks it's 100%. She's gotta love me.
I know. I get that bird. I get the porcupine, the skunk, the trap.
So, Mike, did you run through? I know you said utility. You did the natural ability and utility with the
I
dog?
didn't do the natural ability.
Because I didn't hear you talk about that, but I heard you talk about utility.
Yeah, I did the utility.
Yeah. So, and this is more like a retriever, Hall of Famer thinking about NAVDA's water work. Okay.
Well,
what did you think about the NAVDA water work with your wire hair?
Okay, I can tell you the first thing is I thought the duck search was the dumbest thing.
I know, remember talking to you about it.
It's like, why don't you just teach a dog to do a blind retrieve? Why are
No, you don't understand it.
And you
It's
know
search.
what? I really love
love
duck
it.
search.
Yeah.
And I've actually encouraged some Labrador owners to do it because to really teach a dog to handle, you got to do the pile work, the handling work. I have a buddy who says, I keep dropping ducks, keep ending up on the other end of the pond. Can you help me teach them how to handle? I said, the other end of the pond? I can teach you how to do duck search in about 2 weeks. He'll
He's
be
1
flying
year
over
in,
there.
now he's a duck search expert.
First thought it was really
I know,
dumb.
yeah.
And obviously it's teaching persistence and all that, but it's not a bad skill to just go look on the other side of the pond.
Right.
Because that's what most
expand your search
hunting
without
dog-
me. Just
yeah,
that's
it's what
what they
most
do in
hunting
the
dogs
field.
have to do.
They will take, and that's why I remember back in the day having a few, not arguments, but tailgate talks with hunters and friends, and they're talking about blind retrieves and handling, and I had to do that for the Invitational once, and luckily I had a friend Tracy Harmeyer, who worked for a lab kennel when she was younger, and over the phone and her father-in-law, we got him to do the baseball and the turn, and he took to it. But I remember having those arguments with somebody like, oh, you think your lab can tear up a pond? You should see some of these dogs tear up a pond with no help.
Yeah.
Just
It's-
zero.
it's phenomenal.
In fact,
It's
when they
phenomenal.
don't find the duck in this corner, they look harder.
Yep.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's
And of course, the
phenomenal.
lab is a specialist, and you've taught it to rely on you.
But you put a versatile dog on there searching a pond.
The right one.
It's awesome.
It's crazy
sexy.
awesome.
I will say this: it's not too hard to have a Labrador who will go out of control, a young Labrador who will go out of control
actually
on a
do it.
water blind
And actually
and turn it into a duck search. One of my jobs is to keep Labradors from doing duck search.
God, what a world we live in. We have a dog that should be a duck search dog. Then we take pointing dogs.
No,
that
you should be listening to these dogs.
It's too confusing.
Yeah.
So utility went well.
Utility went great, and all kinds of stuff happened that I was not expecting, and she.
He was giving me play-by-plays, and he's like, "Oh, she
mean,
just
like,
totally." And I was
what
like, "I'm
chapter
so
were you at?
sorry."
Wisconsin River chapter in
I know.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, I know the Karlstroms out there.
And, we had one bird, one pen-raised chucker that started running across the field, and they said, catch it. So she's on point. I'm huffing across the field. I had to about dive on the bird 50 yards away from her and then throw it and everybody shoot. And I look back going, I can't believe she's still back there.
She's standing there waiting.
That is not something I trained for. And I could have been, she could have followed me and gotten a low score. And I would have been like.
She could have took your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
A lot of times we got to tell people, like, take your hat and throw at it. But sometimes.
I mean, you can't kind of set that up the way that bird ran across.
I will tell you, I've judged a few times when I hate that scenario because I don't think it's fair to the pointing dog to see their owner running zigzag with two gunners trying to look like synchronized swimmers.
And I'm going back to the judge, can I pick the bird up?
And then somebody told me, you didn't raise your gun on that one. Well, I was throwing the bird and I run across the field. I forgot to raise my gun.
My bad. My bad.
But I have to tell you, on her duck retrieve, she put the bird down on the shoreline after she came out of the water. And when we were all done.
The duck dog trainer.
Yeah. So she got it. And that's why she got a 201 out of 204. That was her mistake. And the judge comes to me and goes, I think I could find somebody who could help you with that. That duck retrieve.
Mr. Lardy.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. Out of all the things. The duck dog. I going back to that. The chasing the chucker around the field. I remember getting frustrated. Sometimes we also get chuckers that are less inclined to fly too. They're it's like the breeding is regulated, right? And I'll say, stop. I said, gunner, shoot the bird. Somebody said, well, we can't do that. I said, sure we can. Well, why can't? Where's it saying the rule? I can't shoot a bird on the ground. I would rather have that dog see that the dog knows the bird's running.
Right.
Why make this a difficult situation?
We're looking like idiots out there running, trying to get it. And just the fact when you run as a handler and your dog is back there 20, 30
like
yards.
you said, it's a cue you don't train for. Yeah. So I would have gunners ground swat the bird. Now, we're going to want to see another bird ideally.
Yes. Yeah.
But I never wanted it to go there. And I know that that would be, especially for the person who, like, you probably had steady. I mean, with your retriever steadiness training, it's such a big thing. Steadiness has got to be spot on for that level. I mean, it's not like they can be wiggling all over. They're like,
in retriever trials?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of wiggling.
Oh, they can do some wiggling? They don't have to be...
Nope.
So I would have thought that the steadiness for your wire hair would have been easy. Was it easy? Or did you feel like it was easy? I shouldn't say easy is not the right word.
I think staunchness was more difficult than steadiness because she was very.
She's wiggly. She's a wiggler.
Oh, okay.
She's a Shakira. Her name should be Shakira.
Because she had done all this early retrieving work, which I taught her off the placeboard to be steady right from the get-go, just about, and so steadiness to retrieve was kind of second nature for her.
Sure.
Well, then the other thing is down south when all the training groups are going on 5 days a week, Mike would show up at a training group. And he would run her on the retriever test setups. So so this dog really learned how to mark and do long distance.
Can she do the technical ponds and all that?
Oh yeah. She runs
totally.
a tune-up drill. I have a multiple water blind tune-up drill. She can run that. But I want to tell you one thing about running the utility. It was amazing how the judges work so hard to make you feel comfortable as a handler and to help you, not excessively so, but to help you do well and make sure you understood everything. You felt like they were rooting for you.
Right.
And in a retriever field trial, because they've got 75 dogs and they got to get a winner and they got 3 days and they got you never
got the warm fuzzy feeling.
You never got the warm fuzzy feeling. I mean, there's great judges in retriever field trials, but they have a little different goal than a NAVDA judge, and it was just really fun. If you will.
NAVDA judges, we only got a handful of people there that day. It's like we want them as excited about being there.
You're like our cheerleaders and your support crew, and you're there just to
It was
help.
awesome.
I totally agree with that because, and there's time, the thing that I loved about the NAVDA system too, which is different from the retriever stuff, is like, if your dog broke or your dog did something pretty egregious,
You were done.
you're done. And in the
You gotta go home.
system,
Yeah.
I've had a dog catch. I've had a dog do great in the field, and then we're coming out and we're done with the field. And then this happened last year. Doozy just goes off and gets into the woods because I'm talking to a judge, and she comes out with a chucker, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. And one judge was like off peeing in the woods, and 2 judges are talking to me, and they're like, hey, we can't judge what we can't see. And I was
Right.
like, God, she retrieved that, crippled bird for us. Wasn't that great? And they're like, yeah, keep digging there, girlfriend. But I love how it's this cumulative that you're allowed some egregious mistakes.
Right.
You just are, because they ultimately judge it of a dog that they'd want to hunt over for the day. And I think there's just a lot.
It's a true hunt test.
It really is.
It's as realistic as we can make it.
Yeah.
But coming from that competition side, Mike, you went to literally 10 dogs. It happened one time in Traverse City, Michigan. 10 puppies all got the same score. 112 points.
Wow. Huh. But I
So it had to
remember-
feel
'cause
different
I was
coming from the competitive
I was texting
world.
you the day of your test, and you were sure that you were done
Yeah.
after the one, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And then you were there reading the scores,
Yeah.
and you got it back, and it's just like, woo!
Because of the duck drop?
No, because of the duck search. She went out and searched for I don't know how long and came back to the line.
Okay.
And I sent her out again, and she went to a different spot and got the duck, but I thought coming back was probably the end of the world. She came,
And it could have been, but in her case, she went and completed the job.
right. And I was kind of down about,
Yeah.
but you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good.
And
That's a
that
good
happened
point.
to me in Ohio about, I don't know, it was like 6 or 8 years ago, and it was a sleeting morning, and none of the dogs even wanted to get in the water, and the sand was like down an embankment, and it was pretty brutal. And my dog gets in, this was Elsie, and she goes and does this beautiful search, and she gets to this far end, and a bunch of mallards got up and flew. So they were wild birds. And she put on about a 7 to 8 minute search, and then gets out of water and comes back around to us.
That's usually not a good sign.
And now, cumulatively for the day, the other dogs were not doing well at all, because it was.
So
it
she
was
looked good in the
sleet.
water,
She looked
actually.
really good.
Okay, that's good.
And I don't know if I may have resent her. I can't even recall. But if you looked at the whole thing, she did her job. She went in. She did a pretty systematic search. She went back. She flushed a bunch of ducks, and in her mind, she was like, well, what you sent me after, you didn't hit, Mom, so they took off. I'm cold. It's been 8 minutes. I'm coming back. And I ended up getting still a 204.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just thought, you know what,
But
you
you
guys...
also got to mean that's from your eyes. They must have saw something.
They did.
Because your description sounds like,
Yeah, and that just made me go, you know what? You guys saw the effort that the dog gave.
That's the thing.
You saw the effort that she gave. You saw she put in an intelligent search. She searched most of the entire pond.
And sometimes that could be one judge making, not that they'd be 2 points apart, but it could be one judge going like, are you kidding me? We just asked this, and the 2 other judges goes, you're right.
Yeah.
And we can do that consensus, and that's what's
And
cool about
that
that.
just became my element of respect so much for Navdo, is like, she came back, she didn't do the full 10 minutes, she didn't find a duck, but you know what? She did the job to ask her to, and it wasn't a big pond. And when she finally got to the birds and they took off, she was like, I'm done.
Got it.
Got it. Yeah, so.
Mike, what's down the road now? You are now the name in Labrador, like in encyclopedia, your name's there by a picture of a lab somewhere. Now you have a wire hair, and you mentioned real quick, like on my next one, because you said to me you never kept a lot of dogs. You trained a lot of dogs.
If I got another dog right now, my wife would kill me.
Well, that's beside the
My
point.
daughter has a small Munsterlander
That's
that's
right.
4 months old, so we're training it
And
together,
she lives close by.
like next door.
Oh, perfect. So that's like having a second dog.
So that's my second dog.
We need to talk about wild bird hunting, though. What?
Why? I'm not very good at that.
Wild bird hunting? No, but so Mike and I planned with our dogs after training 2 years ago, to do a trip out to North Dakota, and his childhood friend Ben went out with us and met us, And it was the first time that I got to hunt with Mike, and it was like tit for tat, right?
Yeah. We're trying to walk each other into the
Wait a
ground.
minute. So there was no more younger
Oh
admiration.
no! I was like, dude, this is my wheelhouse.
This is the
Game
guy
on.
that I wanted. No, you just want to say you ain't good.
Yeah, it's great. It's cute. That's really cute. You're in the Hall of Fame, and
Seems
you've
like
run
Mike
7
said-
nationals. But now we're down to it, right? And I'll tell you we've developed into a beautiful friendship. We've gained, I think, an incredible mutual respect on working dogs, on wild birds and hunting, and then the whole game preservation, because when the fact that you brought like the wax out there and we're waxing the ducks that we shot, and just you even opened up an incredible new world for me that I had never seen for that. And
And you were a duck hunter.
I'd never waxed a duck before.
Right.
I plucked them or
My
breasted them
dad
out.
never breasted a bird out in his life. I didn't know what that was.
I mean,
everything
we
was
waxed
plucked.
like 30 ducks last year between a whole group of us.
That's
it
a
was,
lot of
It was
plucking.
amazing.
a lot of
Like
plucking.
9 different species,
Right.
And I brought, I don't know how I did it. I had 7 dogs on this trip last year. I had 3 cockers, 3 Labradors, and
you
a
had
German
your young,
Shorthair.
Your young wife.
Yeah,
young
7
Wirehair.
dogs, and we just we duck hunted in the morning or in the evening, and then we sharp-tail hunted or pheasant hunted throughout the day. And my gosh, did we have a hoot, didn't we?
Yeah.
And came back and cooked gourmet meals, and it was fabulous. And then we planned this last year, and then I had a little break in between, and then we went up to Ontario and met our friend Dennis, and we grouse and woodcock hunted. So then we repeated the trip this year, and your daughter and her boyfriend Matt came, and Ben came.
Did they bring the Muncie, the puppy?
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you
And
get
his-
road experience?
Kirsten-
skating
Yeah,
on the road?
and she took her for walks by herself, and she
Yeah.
actually
Kicked
kicked up a bird and recovered a cripple that
Nice.
Kirsten had shot. It was only the second bird Kirsten had ever shot.
And
so.
Kirsten shot her first sharp-tail
If
with
there's
us.
ever a dog that's going to recover a cripple, it's the Muncie.
Yeah.
Let me tell you that.
And
right
Kirsten
now.
got to duck hunt for the first time. And there's just a lot of firsts. Kirsten's boyfriend, this was epic, his first wild duck hunt. Now
Wait. I can't say this on mic. Is he old enough to propose yet, or I don't know who
I
it is?
don't know, you should
Okay,
do this.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
But
my daughter will kill you for saying that.
yeah, I know. No, we're not going to say
So
that.
would my daughter
So Matt, who shoots for retriever trainers, he shoots. He's a very good shot. His first wild duck hunting experience, he shoots a double on canvasback, a beautiful drake and a hen, beautiful bull drake and a hen. Yeah, boom. Yeah, we should just quit right there. But it was we hunted for.
Yeah, youth is wasted on the young.
What did we? I got there early because I had to go, shoot things up and limit it out 2 days in a row before you guys even got there on sharp tails.
Oh, I love how she squeezed
Yeah.
that in there.
Yeah.
Just segued that
Yeah,
right in.
yeah. And-
Hey, Ron, this is Jennifer again. What do you do when it's windy?
When it's windy.
Yeah.
So, and I've had opportunities, and besides these hunting trips, I've got 2 trainers down in Thomasville, Georgia, who train bird
You
dogs.
still go down south then in the winter?
Oh yeah.
Do you?
And now I've gone to their prairie camp.
Oh, for like late summer training.
Yeah, so I got Yana on wild birds the last 2
Nice.
summers, and that's really helped with a lot of her issues.
I haven't done that out west, but I have done it in Michigan when we can start running before
right.
gun season. But you know how it's leafy. It's
The struggle's real.
It's a real struggle. You're really better in Michigan to go, and probably in Connecticut. Well, you don't have any birds in Connecticut.
We have woodcock, but not grouse.
But when the woodcock come back, go out there in April before. I think ours is April 15th. Go out there in March and April. You can see through the woods. You can see what your dog is. It's kind of like that kind of going out west.
Yeah.
So Ron, you came up from the lower Michigan to come meet us yesterday, and how's it all been so far?
The food's been great.
Really?
Hospitality's been great.
Yeah.
Not a lot of birds around.
That's because Jennifer shot them all.
Yeah, no
Hey
kidding.
Ron, you gotta walk if you want to get birds, and Ron, you gotta walk with your gun like this.
See, that is not true.
the whole time.
That's Elmer Fudd.
Oh, okay.
I'm wabbit hunting. When you told me that, like, I would have never admitted that to anybody.
That's how I
But-
walk. All the time. Sharp tail hunting, I walk 10 miles with my gun always in the ready position. It's just how I walk.
Like I just kind of swing it back between his hand, this hand, this hand. And when it comes time, it's just boom.
Too late.
I didn't boom anything.
How many birds did you shoot today?
Are we conservationists or are we?
We are conservationists.
Right. None. A big zero. I didn't even have to clean my gun.
Oh my goodness.
But that was because at the one point I could have shot a bird. I was kind of bored and just feeling like, oh, I'm never gonna see a bird. And that's when I saw a bird. And I was telling you about the bell. Like you and I were talking, Mike. I did not stock this new truck and camper with all my stuff.
Jennifer's gotten this anti-bell.
She's no, like you and I were talking. I like the bell.
I'll tell you what, I've been like anti-pointing dog up here so far, and anti-bell. And I've got 2 pointing dogs in my truck, and I can tell you that I think these birds are so jumpy. I think that they're pretty smart, and they know humans pretty well, and they know the dogs. And when I hunt my flushing dogs, I see more grouse with my flushing dogs versus the pointing dogs. I just do. And
well, yeah, because they have to stay within gun range, which is eye range. Well, you know what I'm saying? The pointing dog that's out there 80 yards and makes a little oops, you never knew that bird was there.
But a Brittany that I brought on this trip, who I think is phenomenal, he did great with us on sharp tails. He did phenomenal with us on sharp tails.
Beautiful dog.
Beautiful, great dog.
Beautiful dog.
But the first day that I was hunting him, or what happened the other day, and I was in a good spot, is he'd be on point, I'd come up, he was totally locked up, and there's nothing there. And I'd send him again, and he's totally locked up, and there's nothing there. And then what happened yesterday is I brought him out to this spot, because that happened like 5 times in the morning, and I'm so convinced that there's a bird there. And we had lunch in the afternoon. I no sooner get out of my truck, and he goes on point. I get up, there's nothing there. Now I send him along, and I see a grouse flush ahead, and he locks up on point on the scent. And I saw the grouse flush, and I'm like, he's pointing
where they were.
Whether they heard me coming or they heard him coming. I'm not saying he was busting them, but he was like, and so I don't like, in this, with all the leaves and how flighty these birds seem, I don't want a dog up further than 30 yards. And,
right.
And you know what?
And yet, this afternoon,
it was amazing.
He was on point for 5 minutes. Before we had him on the on the Garmin. We knew where he was, but it took us 5 minutes to get there. And he's locked up under this cedar. And I said, this is going to be, Jennifer already had her limited woodcock. I said, this is going to be a woodcock. And a grouse busted out the other side. He held that bird for 5 minutes.
Exactly. Well, which you can't do without a pointing dog.
But you know what?
You can't do that.
But here's the deal. I'm going to say not only did he hold but the bird held. And that's the thing is like, I don't think the birds were holding.
You know what? That's like one of those chicken and egg things.
Yeah. Maybe the birds held because the dog had them.
There's that bird's like Mexican showdown. If that dog doesn't even wiggle a whisker, that bird's. How many birds have you seen out west, like pheasants? They'll let you walk right by them. If that bird thinks for a second, he knows if he flies, he could die.
Right.
Knows if he runs, he could die. And if he also feels like just a stare down going, and if that dog doesn't quiver, that bird just going, let's see what happens. I've seen, we've chased my buddy Brent's dog, who's one of the uncooperative dogs we talked about. You got to go 300 yards to go find her, but it's there.
Yeah.
Because when she does get it, she gets it at the right distance. And I believe some of them are I don't think they blink. I don't care if their eyes are dry. They just don't blink.
I have 2 labs and Betty Cocker on the truck for my flushing dogs. And I have seen more grouse, seen and gotten shots at grouse over them than I have over the pointing dogs. I think my short hair bumps birds, and I think that
That would
she wiggles at him, but the
I think
Brittany
that answers that.
But the Brittany is definitely more steady.
Yeah.
But in this type of color, there's a ton of leaf up still, and they hunt close. And yesterday I moved 10 birds. I had shots at 6 grouse. Today we moved over 20 birds, and most of our success was over the flushing dogs, wasn't it?
Yeah, although we didn't have the pointers out nearly as much. But you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, you can think grouse hunting, like anything. You could have lived in South Dakota or where you grew up in Wisconsin. If there's good birds in the air and you're walking toward them, you're probably going to flush the bird and you're probably going to get it.
It also makes me dream, honestly, of getting a really good pointer or a really, really good English setter.
I've had those same dreams lately.
Because I'm just like, I
want the
love
staunchest.
I want a dog that's just going to go boing and not want to catch and kill, but it's just going to want to purely point.
Yeah, I just did the interview with Craig Koshik.
The number one reason to have a dog is to recover the game that you kill, not to find the game.
And we wouldn't find
a couple of those birds today.
2 of my grouse today.
You needed the dog that wants to catch and kill them to find them.
Yeah, it was like, did you hit that grouse?
Because you could get that.
I mean, I know there's plenty of setters and pointers out there that retrieve, and I don't want any hate mail from them.
No.
But there is a determination in the retrieve and the versatile dogs that
there is that tracking and to go get it. Absolutely.
And that's just.
And how many times do we recover birds that we don't even think we got?
Yeah, I mean today 2 times. Did you hit it? I think so. I think it's way over there.
Didn't we just eat a woodcock that some other hunter killed last week?
Yeah, my dog found a dead woodcock on the forest floor.
I want to commend Mike. He made spatchcock woodcock. Which is the only other bird that you could have spatchcock rhyme with the method. Spatchcock woodcock. Let's give Jennifer a little. She made a makeshift cranberry sauce.
Yeah, whole cranberries and honey because I didn't have orange juice.
You guys take it to a different level than me and Mike did.
That's what's really fun is with Mike and with Dennis and with Ben is we just we take this culinary level and we just absolutely cook beautiful meals with fresh game, and that's what grouse camp is. Just so much fun.
And you know what really made today more than shooting all the grouse and woodcock that we got was finding my transmitter.
Oh my God!
So all right, that's a perfect way to wrap this up.
Oh.
So I get to the house yesterday, and Mike's starting to talk about something. He goes, "I'm not going to talk about this. I'm not going to talk about this until Jennifer gets here because I can only tell this story once." And other Dennis and Ben are like, what?
And I usually don't drink this much, but it's been a really bad day.
So yesterday was a great day because I found a really wonderful hunting spot. Yeah. So I say it was the best day of my life, or maybe the best, worst day.
Yeah.
It started out that I threw my extra collar in my game bag because I was a little unsure about a couple of things on the Garmin 300.
Your TT25 receiver collar.
Yeah, the mini.
Mini.
Yeah.
So I had that in my game bag,
which most people wouldn't have.
And I ended up. I thought I could cut across this little young cut, and I ended up stumbling through this popple cut that was awful, probably a 5-year-old cut. And
all kinds of dead timber.
Fell a couple times, Get back to the truck and realize actually it was at the next stop I realized that collar had fallen out of my game bag, so I've lost my collar.
Right.
I then start my second hunt, and I realize the antenna has fallen off my Garmin transmitter on the same trek. And I figure, these Garmins are pretty good without their antenna. Well, it wouldn't read a dog past 40 yards, and my dog kind of started running amok. And I would just give her a correction anytime she got within 30 feet. I'd find an excuse to get her. So that maybe she would listen when she got much farther out. It was not going...
Because she was a plusher, was at that point.
So it was not going great. And then we had the last woodcock point, which I had used my Garmin to locate her with, and we were in the thick aspen. And get almost back to the truck, and I look down at my holster.
The holster that holds the 300.
That holds the 300 is
empty.
Empty.
So Mike has lost a receiver TT25.
That's a collar.
Okay, the collar. He's lost the antenna, and then he actually lost
and
the
wait, you
300
forgot.
eye.
He actually had a spare antenna.
Yeah, I did. So I replaced
And
it.
Like
so
Mr.
Mike
Gary.
is
But
off,
it gets better.
Wait
Yeah.
a minute. So Mike is off hunting by himself, and Dennis and Ben and I are all like 45 minutes away in an area, and Mike sends literally like an SOS.
Well, no, I sent a text saying, so I'm going to tell you
I
what
could read the
happened.
text.
So I decided, I knew where the last point was. If I took the TT25, the collar, and I went to
The
where
one you didn't lose.
the one I didn't lose, and I would stand still and listen for the beep, maybe I could find my transmitter. So
In his infinite wisdom,
So I leaned my gun against a tree because I knew I was going to have to walk through the thicket. And I thought, well, to find this gun, I better have something orange here. And I started to take my hat off, but I thought, no, it's going to be really ugly in those popple stands. So I hung my vest up with my gun. So I go and look, and and I'm.
And wait, the vest who had your car keys in it,
had my
with
car
the
keys
gun.
in. We're getting to that. So I go and I look for the collar, and I can't find it. My hearing's so bad. How am I going to hear the tone? Anyway, I can barely hear the tone when it's hanging at my side. So I said,
I love the visual of everybody knows when you're using the collar to see if it's working. You're kind of moving the collar because the collar will, when it stops, 2.5 seconds later, you were acting like the dog.
well, I'd stop and listen for a beep. Yeah.
You'd go on point
Yeah.
with the collar in your hand.
Little role reversal.
Hopefully to hear that little meager beep.
So I give up and I say, okay, I'll have to. I didn't know what to do. We figured that out later. And I go back to get my gun and my vest, and I can't find it. And my phone has 2% memory left.
This is where he sends.
So I send a text to them saying, I've lost my gun, my vest, my Garmin collar, and my phone is, I got 2% left. And my keys to my truck are in that vest. So if I'm not back by 8 o'clock, here's a pin where I am. It's like the last message I could send out.
We're like, Dennis says,
This is like Bear Claw and
Dennis
Jeremiah
is like,
Johnson. I killed the bear.
are you serious? And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to give it my whole evening grouse hunt because you freaking hung your vest and lost
You didn't know how I lost it yet.
And you're like lost.
So anyway,
Did they have to come rescue
I
you?
found my vest and gun.
Right.
Got back to the truck. My phone was dead. And this morning we found the Garmin 300 UC.
No, so it was cool. Mark Zepp, who made us the holsters, and I had his chaps on today. He's a great guy, Mark Zepp. And
Is he a houndsman?
he's a houndsman.
Because that looks like houndsman chaps.
Yes. And I texted him yesterday, and I'm like, okay, so here's what Mike did yesterday. And he was actually out late last night hounding, and he texted me back at about 10:30. Hounding, doing whatever the hounding they do. And so what was pretty cool is previously you and Dennis and I, we all set our Garmin 300 eyes. We all acknowledged each other to track each other, which was super cool, so we can track each other. So what we did this morning
As
was
it turned out, super money savings.
Yeah.
we went out to the spot. I brought my transmitter out, and there it was. It said Mike was like 80 yards away, and we're tracking.
I think what gave us the idea when you got in last night, I said, "Oh, this color says Mike 87 or whatever the distance was."
Yeah, can't we just go
and
track
we started
Mike?
Yeah.
Do these things talk?
Yeah.
And then you guys all like,
Oh
we
my
synced them.
God.
We
Yeah.
synced them.
So we went out. It was raining. It was raining. So we got in the rain, and we get out to the spot. Now it's like 30 feet, 40 feet,
It's like
30 feet,
Geiger
20
counter.
feet.
Yeah.
But the thing is sometimes when you get closer, it starts getting a little funky. So
Because they don't do real well at super short distance.
Right.
So it's raining, and at that point, you went back to get.
I was going to go get the collar because we knew we were within 10 yards.
Right.
So we could
make the collar
You're gonna
beep.
beat.
Right.
And I asked you to get Philly too, because my dog Philly will also, if you drop something and you have her smell it, she'll fly it to my Labrador. So he's off, and it's raining harder, and I'm thinking we could be out of here for a little bit. I'm just gonna go walk back to get my raincoat too, and all of a sudden, it's like turns me, and there it was on the ground facing it with Yana. And it was up, so the orange side, and I'm like, I found it. He couldn't hear me, so I'm back, and I'm like, yeah. So now the next task is I texted Mark again because of your TT25. he said if you basically just go through your 300i and you go through all your tracking,
you follow your track.
Your tracks,
you can follow the
and he knew where he fell really bad. I'm pretty sure you can go
I'm going to
find
look
it.
for it in the morning.
Yeah.
Are you?
So lost $1,000 of equipment, found about 800 of it, 700 of it so far. So you got about 300 more to go. But you know,
So
you can't
the
make
title
that
of this
shit
show
up.
is Last Day, Best Day.
Last day, best day.
I will say, you know what? It's been a on-the-job learning curve. I had really great expectations of learning the 300i unit before I came out here, and I didn't have the opportunity. I did some. We did the InReach stuff, which was great. You know, the SOS also, which I've always been a fan of because something happens. But being able to communicate, and what we decided tonight, which would be really amazing, is when you and I were tag team hunting today, is that if you had your unit also hooked up to the dog that I was running, his collar, when she'd go on point, because we want to hunt really silently,
He would know it.
he'd know it,
Right.
and we'd both
That's
be
what
able
the
to
hounds
tag.
would count on.
Yeah,
They all
tag
sync
team
their
right to
collars
it,
to
because
them.
we had to keep verbally communicating. I'm
Yeah.
like 40 yards that way, nope, that way. So there was.
So we're going to do that from now on, so we know where the other guy's dog
Oh,
is.
and can I mention a little hiccup that happened to me on this trip, because I think it's important for people to know, is my dog 3 days ago got stuck in a leg hold trap. And I unfortunately could say that I don't have any experience with a leg hold trap, although I'm going to become quite a student of them. But it was one of the most horrible days of my dog training career, I have to say. I got out of my truck. I was about maybe 40 yards into my hunt, and my short hair was about 20, 30 yards ahead. She was maybe 10 yards off of a major trail, and we were in a state area. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden she starts to scream, and I'm like, oh my God, she's in a fight with a porcupine, which been there, done that before. And I look up, and it's not. I could see her leg was caught in a trap. And I mean, it was so scary, so horrific. Dennis was about a half a mile away with his truck. He was already about 200 yards out of his truck. He could hear the wailing going on. We had radios, so I said, Dennis, my dog's stuck in a trap. Please come help, because I had no experience with traps. I broke open my gun. I put it on the ground. I pulled my vest off. In my vest, I had a dowel that I use for porcupines that I could Velcro it behind. She was so distraught. She was screaming so badly. And when I approached her, of course, she's kind of a wall of teeth, snapping at anything and everything. My hands were shaking so badly, I had a really hard time even trying to get the dowel, which I couldn't.
Your adrenaline's just...
I mean, my adrenaline was just so pumped. I have zero experience with traps. And I have to say, this trap was at least 6 inches long. It was very heavy duty. It had her right at the carpus, right at her wrist area. She was in agony. And I just thought, I got to figure this out, because my biggest worry, honestly, besides her leg being broken, seeing it on her wrist, is I thought that it was going to cut off the circulation that quickly. So I couldn't subdue her head. I just couldn't at the time. And I just went into like superpower mode, and I stepped on either side of it and opened her up, got her out. I mean, I shook for an hour. I could have packed up and left at that point. It just demotivated me so much for hunting. It was like, why am I doing this? You know, every dog in my truck, I've had a dog that knocked her teeth out. I have dogs that are hurt and dehydrated, and I do incredible dog care. I mean, I'm just so...
Well, you're beyond, you know, I saw you outside sanitizing the cooler you use for...
Yeah, bleaching everything and caring for the dogs and brushing them and pampering them and everything that you can do for these guys to keep them as healthy as could be, and it so demotivated me. I can tell you for 2024 at my kennel, Bug Kennels, we're going to be hosting a trap.
How to get out of a trap?
Not only the traps, is I've read the most horrible stories of people's
snare.
dogs dying in front of the snares. I do keep these heavy-duty German cut snares on me, but I really, truly want to become a student of getting a dog out of a trap.
Well, and the toughest one is the conibear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because...
But most
again,
cocker could get caught in it.
in my experience with doing this for 30-something years, and I've had lot of accidents in the field happen. I've had dogs cut themselves very badly and spewing blood. Having your dog scream and wail while stuck in a trap and not quite knowing how to help them, it was horrifying.
Yeah.
It was horrifying. So
Well, thanks for bringing this on a really down, sad note at the end.
no, we got out.
No.
She's okay. She's okay.
You iced her up.
She's hunted a lot since then.
Got her to a vet in
Right.
it's Australia. No, but
Inside joke.
inside joke.
Inside joke.
She had some antibiotics. She had anti-inflammatories. I iced it. I did DMSO, and she's back. She hunted today. So, but anyway, for those of you out here who don't think it was going to happen to you, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
afraid of falling, getting lost, bears, coyotes, and wolves. I had no fears of traps, and now
It never came in your
it
wheelhouse.
wasn't even in
yeah.
my wheelhouse, and now it is
Yeah.
probably one of the number one priorities.
I'm more worried about snares because I've heard it on a couple podcasts recently, and I'm like, I've got all the tools in the world. I don't have the right cable cutter for that.
Yep.
That's got to
I'll
get.
show you
I carry that
We
in my
ordered them.
business.
We
I've
looked because
got
I read an
one.
article, whatever magazine it was in, or
Right.
Upland Journal or whatever, and I ordered they're like $80. But you know what? I don't
Right.
care because they have to be heavy duty enough that they're going to cut those
And
snares.
they come in circular. Well, let's just finish this. Mike, Jennifer, thank you for inviting me up here. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
It's been good to get the sage wisdom of the senior, the junior, and the. I'm not going to say that.
What are
anymore.
you?
The boner. The bonniere. That's the host in French, okay? I love you guys. I love you girls. I love you girls more.